More like taupe. Taupe?
No, it's like green. It's like green, like mint green.
It matches the
New.
mud. Maybe mud. We're
Is it?
live.
As we
All right,
talk about our
everyone.
wardrobe.
There's a wardrobe. Exactly. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Greg Frank from EverResi Media. Greg has been a great partner in our conversations with BTR SFR space, driving a ton of change and I would say compliance and advocacy in terms of making it easier and better to be an SFR BTR operator. I'll just speak a bit about that when we get rolling. And one thing that's interesting about Greg's background career, obviously a huge connector within the SFR BTR community, and also a ton of experience in the space, not to mention like almost nearly a decade in franchise ops for 100. So not, that in itself can be an entire show in terms of conversations. I'm in Kent, Washington. I'm in, America's mobile office, Starbucks. So I appreciate, shout out to Starbucks for being kind enough to let me squat all day long, especially all the anti-squatting laws happening right now. And
their marketing is working. They're bringing you back.
They're bringing me back. And if you are in the Kent, Washington area, shoot me a line. I'm dropping off donuts next couple of days to folks on site teams as we head over Labor Day long weekend. And we know this on call. So I am chatting in, having conversations and drop in. So shoot me a line on LinkedIn. If you got a team in Kent that needs some donuts or some appreciation. Anyways, to the show, Getting to Hell Yes. So the content Getting to Hell Yes is around how can we solving problems for people that are seeking to have their problems solved and help people want to be helped, not persuading, not convincing, but really angling in and learning about the problem people want to solve. Now that's something more that someone always says, but the difference is we're trying to figure out when they're seeking change, what's going on in their life that seeks them change, that drives them to seek change, and then what prompts them for action. Because just kind of being aware isn't good enough. Like just having a problem doesn't make it a priority. And so what tells are people giving off in order to drive that desire to convert and desire to change? There's a lot of conversations around that today in the last few weeks, especially as we kind of come out of turn season, depending on your vertical, and we're heading into budget season. There's a lot of, oh my God, that was crazy. And oh my gosh, what are we going to do for 2026? So very timely conversations. As always, if you are online and live, please engage. It's super helpful. If you're watching this on the show or listening to the podcast, leave comments. Those are always super helpful. And like and follow the show. Greg and I will get any notification for any comments leave on LinkedIn, and we will respond accordingly. So thanks everyone for listening. Love the engagement. This is live. As always, we transition to our guest for a quick intro on their background so we can kind of like get started and the problem you solve. So Greg, thanks a lot for all of your introductions, all of your network, all of your enthusiasm for solving the problems that we solve. And thank you. And so let's kick it off with you, man. This is about your background. Like, how did you get in from 100 Got Junk into the role you've got right now with EverResi? What's the problem you're solving with EverResi? Because we've had these conversations before, and I think there's a couple things to lean in on. You have multiple customers. I'm one of your customers. How do you manage your multiple stakeholders and their goals? So I'll leave that to you to reveal. I'll pass it right to you, buddy.
No, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I mean, of course, I've been a longtime follower, but first time participant on this end.
Thanks to Kelsey.
Yeah, thanks to Kelsey. I mean, I think many of us in this industry owe Kelsey, tremendous gratitude. And that's what I love about this space, right? I mean, Kelsey's this ultimate connector. I mean, this industry is just a community of just incredible human beings. We're innovative. I mean, especially in this SFR BTR community, we are literally flying the plane as we build it. So where did I come from? I mean, I started in SFR back in 21 on the owner operator side as executive director of field services, coming, like as you said, out of a franchise system, which was all about the customer experience. obsessed with the customer experience, but really coming out of a company where if you focus, where we believed if you focused on your people will drive the customer experience. The customer experience will drive the business metrics. And I think that's like a huge message that the SFR BTR space is working towards every day. Um, and so I do find a lot of similarities of where it came from. And it's not just me, others, have come out of iconic brands and have landed in this space and are really helping making the contribution. So I didn't have any background in property management other than being with that previous organization and working with property managers, of course, as a vendor. But it was my first time on the owner operator side. So, and now after spending some time on the owner operator side, I found myself seeking my next opportunity. And I realized that this industry, this single family rental, build to rent space, did not have its own media platform. Again, relatively, it was an emerging asset class. If I looked at senior living, student housing, even these smaller sectors, they each had their own platforms. And outside of LinkedIn and the few conferences throughout the year, we had no other way to amplify and communicate outside the silos that existed. And so to me, it's communication. We are building the world's largest SFR BTR community. And if you identify as in the single family rental space, welcome in, welcome home. We are building out everything to enhance that experience for your people, your residents, and all the other stakeholders. So we launched this about a year ago. Next month will be 1 year. And now this week, talk about getting to hell yes. We're launching the industry's first, because I'm sure there'll be others down the road, but the first weekly digital media program. And it's a big responsibility, and it's a privilege. And it goes back to the people of this industry. And I think to your earlier point, I'm a firm believer that you can't persuade people without a story. And that's what we're telling the story of the voices of the industry through their own voice.
Well, and especially interesting so for starters, give yourself some credit. You may not have came in with property management background, but you had decades of experience in renewable revenue. And I think that what's interesting about what you said about customer experience, I know about what you came to talk about customer experience, is that in the renewable revenue business, customer experience drives your multiple on the valuation of the business. So if you've
100%.
got a leaky bucket of revenue and you're constantly putting in more cost to acquire because your cost to retain is coming out the bottom, you've got a negative net company. That is very expensive to run. Not to mention, very, very frustrating because you're constantly trying to figure out what the market you serve. So give yourself some credit there. And number two, go ahead.
I appreciate that. And I'm grateful for your contributions. You've been tremendous. What you bring to this space, it's, I feel like we're all just beginning. Not all of us are at the beginning of our careers, but this industry is at its infancy. When you hear the top thought leaders, if in baseball analogy, we're not even in the first inning. We're just getting batting practice started.
Yep. And I think that there's a couple things that you and I have chatted about and the industry needs to enable to have a license to keep operating, right? And there's things that are truths. There's things that are also not truths with respect to the intent and the motivations of the people that are in this industry. Because if you open the news right now, there's a lot of it seems to be very favorable as an elected official to kind of beat up this industry. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we are all in the providing people with a wonderful place to live business. And that is unequivocally universally agreed upon by everyone that I've met at every single of these conferences. I know everyone that you've met has the exact same interest and intention. And it's just the bending and the twisting of those intentions for things that may or may not meet people's ideals or match what they're accustomed to being their ideal. Is a better way of putting it. When you take a look at the market right now, you've got the average age of buying your first home has gone from 33 to 38 in the last 3.5 years, which doesn't preclude people from living in a home. It should not, just because you cannot acquire the asset, which by the way may or may not be the right financial decision, you still have the opportunity to live in a home, which is something this industry is doing. And you're enabling that, bearing the lead a little bit because we talk so much, but like the community you're creating enables the ability to create more opportunities for people to live in a home. Let's ignore the financial transaction and focus on the quality of life of the people that are in these homes and how we can make that happen. So when you started EverResi, you took a look at the gap in the market. Who was your first customer, right? Who were the first people you sought to serve,
sir,
in order to get things going?
On the owner operator side, right? I came from the owner operator side. I knew exactly. The vendor side is where I sort of found myself. And that's where I got the full picture of the industry. And I was at a conference, and Dave Singlin, the chairman, the former founder of AMH, America's Home for Rent, he stood in front of the keynote and said, right, we only exist as an industry because of all of you in this room. And I looked around the room and I was like, wait, what? When I was on the operator side, I did not have that advantage of understanding, of seeing the full picture of the industry. So really I feel like our platform is designed to help tell the story, but this industry has an issue with the perception of who it is. It has allowed other entities to define, and that's not who we are. I mean, you've been in this space. You come from other asset classes. I mean, it does not take long to realize that this industry is made up of diverse in terms of women leaders. There's always more that could be done. But this industry has done, because it's so new and because companies don't grow, people do. And we needed people to grow this industry. Yes, the only reason this industry exists is because of technology and innovation. You could not have done this industry in 2005, right? The technology just didn't exist. But now we're coming into our 15th year. If you think about in terms of the institutional and corporate ownership, right? This is sort of like where the multifamily apartment industry was in the 70s and the 80s, when corporations started buying apartment buildings. So, and so what got us to year 15 and what's going to get us from 15 to beyond is not the same initiatives. And that's really what EverResi brings to the industry.
And a lot of the things so that's the owner operators. So how does EverResi solve the problem that the owner operators are seeking to solve?
Again, so EverResi, if you think of, as you know, we have a few pillars, three pillars, and the EverResi platform is really the voice of the industry. It's where we amplify the top thought leaders, from the field services, the folks on the front line, to leadership, to C-suite, and everybody in between. And we're also working very hard now to incorporate the voice of our residents. So EverResi is really the community of communication, of inspiring, and EverResi really speaks to the silent majority. Yes, there's two big industry associations in single-family rental, but they'll both tell you the majority of owner-operators in this space do not belong to any association. And when we look at who is following us, that is, who we are speaking to. So we're really, through communication, we're educating, and we're bringing folks in that are coming into this asset class, and it's almost like the first day of school. People know you should be here, but you're not really sure who to talk to. You're not sure what the relationships, and EverResi is really complementing that. And then, of course, we have fantastic events. This is where you and I come to. And so we see ourselves as an on-ramp to the in-person events, and our on-ramp to the excellent associations that make up the single-family rental space. On top of that, yes, we're focused on learning and development. So back to the owner-operators, we are working on national standards. We are working on the development of our people. We are creating the systems to ensure that no matter if you are an SFR BTR operator in Atlanta or Las Vegas or Dallas, Texas, no different than a franchise system, that your teams can deliver the same level of first-in-class experience to your residents, no matter where you are. And that's sort of like the big picture. Each of these organizations, this industry again, brings in a lot of people from hospitality. Some of the chief technology officers and the other C-suites, they come out of the biggest names in hospitality. So they do look as the resident as a guest at times. So there's so much going on as we try to figure out the best way to serve our internal teams and our residents and all the stakeholders. And then so we're focused on learning and development. So, we see that as the mind of the industry. And then we have Resi Gives, which is the heart, the philanthropic organization, nonprofit, which is all focused on giving back to the communities that we live, work in, and build in. So it's the voice, it's the mind, it's the heart.
I think what's interesting about the state of the industry right now, and even the importance of a brand like EverResi, is you take a look at I'll make up a word here, I think, the villainization of SFR, or at least institutional owners of a single family. It's become very popular to villainize these people that are providing safe places to live. Like, these are safe places to live, right? And consequently, I think what's emerged is that if they hadn't been villainized, or their license to operate hadn't been challenged, there might not be a gap that needed to be closed, because they could go about their business, accumulating homes, buying things that are. I mean, just talking to someone the other day, like, a builder like a DR Horton, a Pulte, a Lennar, a Taylor Morrison, they're building housing that we all desperately need. But in some communities, they don't sell out. They've got publicly traded mandates. They've got to offset those assets, those units, into an entity that has a rental-based investor objective, right, versus a transactional investor objective. Look at Taylor Morrison and Yardley right now, right? They have different investor calls because they have different mandates. And so, like, if we did not have this industry, there would be less housing that would be built, and there'd be more for those that are even buying, And so
and less choices. I mean, you also this industry is evolving as we are here in the U.S. and North America. I mean, this allows you to a turnkey experience with a national provider or a professional property management company, where when you get that job in another city, of course, it's a big back to work, everything so this company allows us to live in, like you said, safe, clean, habitable homes, the way we live today. This whole, the American dream, buy the house. That's not how majority. Sure, the media and elected officials might like to talk about that, but that's not necessarily like, kids grow up, they move to other cities, they have children, parents sell their homes. They don't want to have to move to a multifamily down the road. They want to be able to move to a single family home where their grandchildren are. They want a home that is multi-generational, that possibly for where they are. So again, back to hospitality, right? We choose hotels, like when you're with a certain chain, when you want a 5-star experience, you go to a 5-star for your anniversary weekend, right? When you're on the road and you want a buffet downstairs that you can grab something, the SFR BTR is developing products that meet us where we are in our life cycles.
And that kind of like pronouncement of the gap that it closes has not been commonly heard at the kind of like long tail part. What I mean is that if it comes from Dallas, if it comes from Invitation, it comes from First, whatever, like, people assume that those are banks talking and not people talking, and the humanization of that industry is lost when it's kind of caught up in an analyst call. And so, like, what I'm just playing back to you, I want to make sure that everyone that I hear it, or we hear it together, is that the amplification of the voice of the owner operators never actually, it's falling under noise and under pressure from other people saying, you're bad. And consequently, they are, they could be, I'll say their license to operate is under threat. And I used this example the other day. Imagine if, like, you're in Georgia, right? Imagine if in Georgia you had this for the second most expensive asset you're going to buy in your life. You had two choices. You could lease a car, and you can buy a car, right?
100%. No
But
different.
In Virginia, you could only buy cars.
Right.
What's that going to happen to the labor population of Virginia, right? Now they can only buy cars. So they're going to choose to lease other places, live other places. They're going to follow their money because they maybe don't want to own a car. They don't want to have a fractional car. All those different sort of options that are available to people. And so that availability of the financial option affects everyone's wallets that we're all struggling with today because of the shrinking purchasing power and the amount of interest, insurance, and tax that we're paying.
And the perception, the misaligned perception. Not everybody chooses to buy a home like we did 20, 30 years ago as an investment. There's other opportunities. People, like, to your point, people are choosing, just like you choose to lease a vehicle based upon whatever circumstances, people are choosing to lease homes.
And that's working out better for them. Right? If you look at how often, I don't know, when was the last time you bought an album or anything like that, but when you buy you subscribe to music, everything is it's subscription housing, right? And I don't worry about any sort of thing. I just want to have someone else take care of it and make it available. So it feels uncomfortable because it's the largest purchase, maybe it's a big decision in people's lives. But there's a whole industry. You can't forget there's an entire industry that's based on people, like the acquisition process of buying a home. And they're under threat right now, right? Because 14 million people are renting right now, not buying.
And what if, whatever reason, life happens and you want to, temporarily live in Florida, right? You maybe, but purchasing, insurance, all of that, right? To be able to lease, a brand new construction in a purpose-built community, and in a year or two, when your life changes or circumstances, and you need to pick up and move on, then it's that turnkey experience. Like, that's how millions of Americans, choose to live. And this, again, back to this industry, is meeting the consumer with a product that they, that one they didn't know they needed, but yet, showing now that we're just in the beginning. This product complements who we are.
So is the gap in the market for messaging? So we spoke earlier about how the top 4, top 5, they've got their voices and their platforms. But there still is, like 90% of homes are owned by, not those top 5. And so, like, why does the gap exist? So does the gap exist that part of the market is not disorganized, but not organized in terms of, like, the top 5? Like, what has created the gap for EverResi that is worth closing?
I mean, I think it's everybody, no matter where you're in that corridor. The goal is, how do we become more professional? How do we deliver how do we drive the resident journey and ensure, like you said, that the renewals are there? And of course, as you know, this industry does much better when housing sales are strong. So let's also remember, all the data shows this industry does better when housing is more affordable. So we all win, when we solve the housing crisis, the policy crisis, and the lack of inventory. But for right now, this industry provides solutions. Back in, after the downturn in 08, 09, right? This industry, we could not have revitalized the neighborhoods without this industry. Like, that is all just sort of like brush, it's not on the radar. Like, nobody wants to talk about perception. There's so much has been done through some of the the operators that you spoke of, and it goes back to perception. But let's think back of Uber, right? Think of Uber was sort of in a similar role when it
Right.
came out.
Right.
Cities wanted to ban it. New York said absolutely not, and now that whole industry. I mean, you have industry, you have states now that are allowing driverless vehicles, but yet you can't have driverless farm equipment. So there's disconnects in every sector. And
Mhm.
this one, is just working through those headwinds.
So now you also have, so the owner operators are your customer because you close the gap with them for communication around, the attaching it to the ideals of the broader population. And then you also have vendors as your customers. So how do you close the gap
Absolutely.
with vendors?
So vendors, I mean, they're the unsung hero also in this space. I mean, it's really a partnership, right? When you're managing, 30, 40,000 plus of scattered assets, yes,
Mhm.
many of these organizations have first in class in-house teams, but they can't do it all. No different than a university. When they go through turns in the summer, they bring in outside. Sure, during the year, they have on-site. So very similar in a lot of the owner operators in this industry. So vendors provide the expertise. Vendors provide the technology, the prop tech. Vendors help this industry pulse faster while driving that resident experience. Let's think of a natural disaster. When you have natural disasters hit certain areas. I mean, especially a national operator can come in with massive amount of resources with the financial backing. So if you're renting from a national operator, they could easily move you to an asset a few towns over. Like you're provided this turnkey experience, and if you own that home, you probably have a blue tarp on your roof for 2 years before the insurance gets out there. So again, back to perception, and this industry steps up and ensures that their residents, certainly have a first-in-class experience, and that's part of the story that we're telling on our platform.
Well, and a lot of the work that you spoke a little about around standardization. So why does standardization need to come to the forefront for this industry?
Yeah, back to setting one, I think it's all about you have to set your people up for success. I mean, one,
Mm-hmm.
I think when anybody goes to work somewhere, we all want to know what's expected of us, and what are the resources and what does success look like. And so, one, we're painting that picture. We're painting that picture across those national standards of how to inspire your internal teams, of how to understand that people have entrusted this industry to put a roof over their head. This is a place that millions come home to every day.
Right.
And so it's a responsibility and a privilege. So standardization allows the owner operators to ensure that they are providing that first in class experience internally, and internally they're able to deliver that to their residents.
On a reliable basis across all
Consistent.
48, right?
Right.
Or 50.
Just
Yeah.
because it's common sense doesn't make it common practice. So through the standardization, it's going from common sense to common practice.
And how are you collaborating to bring that standardization forward? Because presumably, they've been in business for 15 years now, so they've got something they're doing on a repeatable basis. So how are you drawing out a commonality amongst the different ways that people do things to drive a standardized operating procedure?
Yeah, I mean, I really think it goes back to the new participants in this space. As you said, we have some incredible organizations that have been here from the beginning. They are established, and but it's really it's no different than any industry, right? You're only as good as the worst behavior you're willing to tolerate. And that might sound a little harsh, but it's just that we have so many, we have operators, icons in real estate that are coming from commercial real estate. They're coming from multifamily, and they are trusted brand names, but this space is a whole different beast. And that is what they're seeking.
And if they don't standardize, what's the risk to them? Like you mentioned, that it's you only tolerate you operate to the lowest level of your standards, your lowest level of your system, your lowest team, etc. So what happens when the lowest level happens?
I think it just goes back to training and communication. I mean, it's really ensuring that if you're in the single family rental space, regardless if you're a mom and pop, emerging mom and pop, and own one one or two assets, or you're a corporate owner with multiple portfolios, right? We're all striving for that resident experience. We all want to deliver, again, similar to like the restaurant. I mean, think of hospitality industry, the restaurant industry. So, we're ensuring that as a resident or as a team member, regardless of the size of that organization, they have the access to the best in practice, the standards, to ensure that everybody is set up internally and externally, that everybody is set up for success.
And the risk is that, let's use a kind of a metaphor that everyone's acknowledged or recognizes, that you go manufacture food, you sell it in different states. It's got to pass a standard, presumably put forward by the FDA, maybe somebody similar to that, right? So, and that's a government agency. Now, this government is probably not spinning up new agencies. And if we don't, we're vulnerable to criticism from the media. We'll lose our license to operate through legislation. So is that a real danger in this business, where someone's going to say you cannot own more than 50 homes as an institutional investor in Massachusetts?
We have the opportunity to self-regulate, no different than the motion picture industry, the video game industry. I think as a consumer, right, the elected officials work for the consumers, and as a consumer, we just want no different than going in to get your hair cut, right? You want to know that that individual has the competency and is part of an organization that they have set a competency level. And again, we have some of the top names and some of the brightest minds in this space. We're just establishing what good looks like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then the problem that we solve is standardizing. The problem that EverResi solves is standardizing, and that standardization has come from a collaboration of the owner operators and the vendors, who are that's the group that puts the tent up, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And then communicating that progress to the legislators, so that they're mindful of the fact that we are on a path to self-regulation. There is a roadmap and a journey to get there. And because we're collaborating with both vendors and operators to produce an ISO, what this is going to look like.
Right.
And legislators don't feel they've got to stand up an organization to do that.
And it's really the consumer chooses, right? You mentioned I came out of a franchise system. Why does a sole proprietor choose to get into a franchise, right? The fact is that if you invest and you execute on that franchise or's playbook, the likelihood of your success is significant, right? So this has been sort of a fragmented mom and pop industry, and we're just really now in year 15 getting to the point where we have the ability to really set those standards. Again, what got us to year 15 and what's going to get us to year 15 and beyond are different initiatives, and that's what we're establishing now.
Well, because the conversation of housing, people are starting to pay attention. Well, they kind of weren't really paying attention before because there are other things to worry about, but now it's like right in the middle of the bullseye.
This industry had a huge surge after COVID. I mean, you had folks, working from home. This industry had a lot of pressure put on it, and it grew extremely quickly because of demand. Because you had mom and dad, or you had two adults at home with kids, the dog, in a multi-family. Kids were working, home from school. Both the two adults were home working remote, and so the opportunity to move to a neighborhood where the kids could go in the backyard, where you could have the driveway, you had the room. So this industry, it's like in anything, it's almost like a catch-22. We had a few years where we grew too fast, but think of it just, courts shut down. I mean, we went through a pandemic, and this industry provided solutions to, a large segment of our population that was, that felt that a multifamily or two-bedroom apartment or whatever just didn't complement what was happening in their lives right now, not by their choice.
And did
So,
you find good?
you know, so I'm just saying, so we're coming out of that, and just like other industries are still trying. Think about Starbucks, right? I mean, how long has Howard, the CEO, been asked, encouraging businesses to everybody to get back to the office, right? So I think we have to look at the big picture and realize that this industry matured tremendously during the last 2 years, just like so many others did.
Mm-hmm. That's that ceiling of complexity, right? I mean, when the first home was bought and leased, and as the legend goes, somewhere in Phoenix, I mean, it was a street sign on a corner, and the people came in like it was an experiment that caught fire, and it's doing awesome right now. It's solving a lot of problems for a lot of people. So when you take a look at your customers, so the majors, the not majors, the vendors, like when you bring this community together, how do you know that your customer is a hell yes? What I'm getting at is that how do you find out that they are going to collaborate with you on the mission? It's a mission, it's a for-profit mission company, and you're delivering on the goods. But how do you know? You talked to us, and we were like, "Yeah, I'm in." How did you know right away that we were going to be in and want to be part of this?
I just believe that I think as an industry, we all just want to do better. And I think
Mhm.
this is all voluntary. So the folks that are participating are the ones that care about culture within their organizations. They care about developing their people. They care about building, a high performing organization that is hell yes focused on that resident journey. And so if you don't, it's like being in hospitality. If you don't care about the guest experience, then you probably shouldn't be in hospitality. If you don't care about the resident experience, then you shouldn't be in single family rental.
So then that's a great jumping off point to the next side of things. So what defines the resident journey in this asset class?
Yeah, and that's sort of back to the standards. It's no different. That we're scripting everything. It's very similar to going into a restaurant. The server comes over, asks for your beverage, right? So we're building all that out. When you put in a work order, how quickly it's responded. What is the response time? What does the communication look like? What technology can we leverage? Because these are scattered assets, meaning an individual needs to drive, an hour or two possibly to get to that home. For some of your viewers that don't know what a scattered asset, that's what we call a single family home. There's technology that you can empower the resident to be able to begin to triage the situation, and that technology just didn't exist. So that's why this is like this incredible ecosystem. I mean, it's really this like incubator of just technology and brilliance coming together to help people, to help us all live better. I mean, really, I know that sounds a little cliche, but really, it's providing an individual that is, choosing to rent that home, to lease that home, providing them with the means to almost have a better experience than if they were a homeowner.
Do you find that? I mean, there's some obvious analogs there. Like, living in a hotel would be a lot easier experience than owning your own, unit. But like when you take a look at, okay, so let's get back to the selling side of things, the value you deliver. So you talk to a lot of people, and you have a lot of offers out there. Come join the movement. Some people probably tell you you're crazy. We don't need this. Stay out of our way. Mind your own business. What kind of objections do you get with respect to joining the EverResi mission to deliver on what you're looking to deliver on?
I just have to say, I mean, more, the hell yeses, even from the icons in real estate that are coming into this asset class,
Yeah.
and some of them, right? I mean, they are hungry to set their folks up. And again, back to, we don't have 6 decades like the multifamily space has been around, right? The owner operators coming in here are coming in and they're learning from multifamily. They're learning from wherever they came from. And so we need to pulse faster. And so again, if you're here, you want to run the best operation you possibly can. And again, we just like other industries. I mean, look, again, back to technology, back to Uber. Look at rideshare. Did it have a little bumpy launching? Absolutely. And this industry is no different than any other. Back to perception. Why we're under that microscope. That's not for me to say. But we're putting the right people in the right seats, and we're having everybody row in the same direction. And when you do that, that's how you make the magic.
Incredible things happen. So why now? Like why? We talked a little bit about the threat of legislation, the need to get everyone consolidated and rolling in the right direction, and talking the same word and speaking, being the same way. Why is this something that needs to happen? Maybe better yet, what if we didn't do it now? What would happen?
The pain points would only get worse. Residents would continue to be subjected to less than pleasant experiences, right? I mean, like they say, like an educated consumer is your best customer. And, we are working to ensure that, as an industry, we are delivering the experiences that an educated customer is expecting, is entitled to, and it's just the right thing to do.
So do you find that, like, if you take a look at your customers, like your buyers, and then you've got resident as a stakeholder, you don't sell residents, I'm guessing. A resident can't subscribe to EverResi.
No,
I want to just
of
make
course,
sure. Yeah. So you've got your stakeholders, the vendors, the residents, and then the owner operators. And then those are your stakeholders. Your customers are vendors and owner operators for business, right? And then
ancillary service providers in the space.
Sure. And then they're all working together to deliver this resident experience. So the resident doesn't really have it's unfortunate that their channel they can choose from is media and review. So like they have like no button or a nuclear button. That's kind of all they have. They don't have anything in between. Does that sound right?
But many organizations here do use customer experience. I mean, we incorporate the voice of the resident in the when we look at missing systems, when we as we set those standards, we know what makes the resident extremely happy, and we know for opportunities for improvement, and that is what we're building out, those standards, by amplifying the voice of the resident.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that, it's very difficult to argue against the resident's voice being something listened to. How do you find in terms of making the resident's voice a priority? Like, where does that land? Because if it was a priority all along, there'd probably be a lot less problems to deal with. So how did that emerge as being a gap?
I just think back to, think of like the airline industry, right? We all fly, we're all road warriors, right? We want to make sure that, we've seen the government step in, in recent years, and more not benefits, but accommodations. I think this industry, we want to be ahead of that, right? It shouldn't have to come to to any type of, mandate to ensure that we establish the best practices, the best standards. I just think it goes back to the people in this industry coming from other sectors, coming from other asset classes, and we have the opportunity to really enhance the experiences. And I think it's almost like, think about Airbnb. Like, why do we all, many, people crave to go to an Airbnb because you're looking for what? That experience. But you want to make sure, right? You do the review, you read the reviews, you want to make sure that, what other people said. So all of that is in play here. And that is all those are all the systems we're building out now.
I kind of getting ready for this call on something else. I came across, I hadn't seen this before. Tricon has published their resident bill of rights. Have you seen that in anybody else?
So I can't speak for Tricon. But
I saw it. It's public. It's out there. It's on their website.
Yeah.
No, I'm just curious. So that, there's no there. If it's there and it was a mistake, that's too bad. It was really good. It's good work.
Yeah.
So you should publish it, but promote it. But like, do you see that? And I was thinking about passenger bill of rights as you're talking about that. Like,
yeah.
Have you seen anybody else talking about that? Be that formal about it?
So yeah, as you know, we're in those conversations. We
Yeah.
are speaking about that, and I think that's just the evolution. I mean, this is almost like, right now this industry, again, went through that surge, and it's almost like spring training. And as we move into year 15, and as we come out of the pandemic, a lot of organizations and an industry as a whole, we're having a chance to go back to the playbooks and figure out how to minimize the headwinds that we experienced in the beginning.
Well, I think what's interesting right now is that or to think through, is that the problem wasn't big enough. No one paid attention. So the industry's allowed to do its own thing. It might not have been worth paying attention to, because who knew if it was going to be successful or fail? Because if they'd all gone under, why would you have raise your voice? And I also believe that, well, I have conviction around this, that this is the missing middle for where people are going to live.
And you said it. You hit the nail on the head.
So if we don't take the responsibility and be accountable to creating a resident experience, it's going to be kind of like, and I don't know, some people may not remember these days, but used car sales used to be really shady business. Now it is a tidy, professional, self-regulated industry, right? You go buy a car from a Honda dealer that's had it's pre-approved Honda, certified Honda living, Honda car. There's warranty behind it. There's maintenance. There's all those things behind it, and it's not a shady experience whatsoever. Whereas it used to be pretty, it used to have its own problems. And so you take a look at the initiatives by that industry to make that a much better agreement. And then they're able to create that exit opportunity so they could actually open the doors for leasing market. So it's interesting how it all works together in terms of an ecosystem of creating capital and equity exits for everybody in the industry. Because I think Mandy was just posted about it, is that if you're a homeowner and you feel you've had significant equity appreciation over the last 20, 30 years, and maybe you want to pass that off to your children, it might make more sense for you, and you're thinking about moving to the Smile States in Charleston, it might make more sense for you to sell your house in New Hampshire and move to Charleston in a BTR or an SFR, and give that equity, that if you can, give that capital to your family so you can help them out. And so it's creating a ton of different exit opportunities for everybody else. People don't hear those stories, right? They don't understand this is actually, it creates a lot liquidity in the market.
And again, no disrespect to anybody living in what I'm going to say, a garden style, but is that consumer really going to move to a duplex or a 2-floor walk up in Charleston? They're not. That's not where they are in their life cycle. There's there's people starting out. There's reasons why for that consumer, but the individual you're talking about is not moving to a multifamily or a duplex or a garden style community.
So tell us a little bit about the BTR movement. I don't know if many people have heard that or understand it. How is that different than SFR by definition? And how is it different from an operations perspective?
We're gonna have to do a whole nother show. I mean, just for those that don't know, build to rent is purpose built new construction communities. And it's a lot of the lessons that we learn from scattered assets, right? You reduce the windshield time. You can have a technician on site. People want to be in communities. Just the options now in land and whatnot. Capital's available for new construction, whereas challenging on scattered assets. So again, back to kudos to this industry, to having the grit and continuing to provide housing options when economies and whatnot were against them.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're being rewarded for it, right? I mean, like it or not, this industry is growing from. There's probably only one that had 100,000 homes 3-4 years ago. Now you're probably upwards of 3 of the big ones have 100,000 homes. You've got, if you look at the asset classes that are available for investment, like there are asset classes that are feeling more pressure than the predictability of residential income. And so, like, if you can get into something that has a backstop of an asset along with the upside of residential income that's got lower variability to the market, that's like music to the ears of a pension fund manager who's looking for a recurring coupon on that exceeds what you could get on debt and maybe doesn't have the same downside as a debt bond, right? So it's like it's creating opportunity that didn't exist.
And think about it, who benefits from that? That's that school teacher. That's that librarian that retired that is now selling that home in New Hampshire and might want the option to move. So let's think about, again, back to who the end user is.
Mm-hmm. The resident, and making them available, giving them options and choices for housing. It can be hard to go,
and that retired school teacher that is focused on that pension.
That's right, because then they can have an option that maybe they can leave their home in New Hampshire, go live in Charleston, and have a living that matches their pension, right? So it's good, and so the world that we're facing is kind of tied together. So we've got your owners, you've got your operators, and stakeholders of the residents. We're making sure we're kind of reinforcing the rules so that there, like in every industry, there's a lot of fast growth. There's lack of standardization that occurs because everyone's trying to get the job done. And there's duct tape, there's baling wire, there's all those things that are happening. And consequently, a few balls get dropped along the way. Those balls make the news. A legislator or somebody grabs a hold of that and fires up a whole whirling dervish around this villain that we want to point the finger at. And it's big, it's rich, it's a bank, so it's easy to kind of villainize. And EverResi is helping to create the stories and the narratives around the people and the residents, around the problems that they're seeking to solve, and then how the vendors and the owner operators are solving those problems, amplifying those voices so that they're good stories that can be shared about how this helped make my life better, and maybe create some fiscal flexibility, create liquidity for an asset that's otherwise quite sticky, quite sticky, and all of this is now happening, and it really is happening in real time for anyone that's listening. And so it can be a bit disjointed, pulled in different directions, because the different the bankers that are involved, the size of the checks are more zeros to it, the ability for a resident to amplify their voice on their own is universally available. And so all of that needs to be contained. So there's a playbook that is consistent, repeatable, and standardized, so that we have a license to operate to give people homes that they can afford to live in. Otherwise, it won't happen. So those are some of the problems that we solve in who buys and why they buy. Did I get it right?
I mean, you captured it.
All right. Okay. So then when you look at where you're at, when you started, you're an operator and you look at what you're at, and even when you're thinking to yourself, we need to create this media company, what's a bit of advice you would have given yourself and said, either I should do this, I shouldn't do this, why this needs to be done? What would you tell yourself, either a younger self or maybe someone who's joining you in the mission EverResi? What advice would you give them with respect to the success that you're finding in terms of delivering this mission to this audience that desperately needs it?
Yeah. I'm just a firm believer, how I built this. I'm just a firm believer that we can do more together than any one of us can ever do on our own. And that is what led me to lean in. I did have the luxury of being in this space, of getting to know the individuals and the organizations, and I just believed that if we could, create this tent, build this community, focused on people, focused on the resident journey, that everything else would come in alignment. And here we are, less than 12 months later, and our platform now, with our relationships on both the corporate and on the small, on the emerging mom and pops. Our platform now serves the owners, operators, brokers, and investors of 15 million single family rental homes in the US. And I mean, that is, if you had told me this a year ago, we would have that platform. I think, I would have said, you're a Meshuggah.
I mean, and when you think about, and I don't
I mean,
know, I don't know if this number is inclusive. I know now you're throwing the good stuff back. Like there's 45 million rentals in the U.S. and I don't know if that includes SFR or not. That's irrespective. So it's either 1/3 or 1/4 of the available rental property out there. So it's either 15 million of 60 or it's 15 million of 45. I don't know that detail. Someone will correct me, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
They love correcting me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
They love to correct me. But it's a big number, and it's helping people live in homes, right? And so that mission, and then again, the purpose of your new show is to help amplify those stories. So maybe we just close out a bit around the new show.
Yeah, I
and then we'll kind
appreciate
of wrap
that.
up the last bits.
Absolutely. Please join us on Inside SFR BTR. The top voices, the headlines, the moments moving the industry forward. So it's give us 10 minutes. We'll bring you inside and really give you the update for the week of what's happening, what markets are moving, what are the top voices, what's happening at some of these incredible conferences within these organizations, and so leveraging digital, and again bringing in the silent majority that is just coming into this industry. They're trying to figure it out. That's who our program is designed for. We're going to have a lot of organic programming. We've got some great top voices. People are going to come and see some of their best friends in the industry, some of the top leaders that are going to have their own programming podcasts that we are producing. So a ton of content, a ton of information. And please, so new episodes are going to drop every Friday on EverResi.com or wherever you get your streaming. And that leads me to who I'm going to nominate to come in next and can continue to tell the story of EverResi and Inside SFR BTR. Ryan Saturday. Ryan Saturday is my co-host. For Inside SFR BTR. We've been together in this industry for a minute now, and he couldn't come in with a whole different perspective. He comes in from the portfolio acquisitions, that whole side, and I think he can sort of build out this picture. I'm sort of on the people side, on the operations, and he can come in on asset management and give you that full picture of what we're building and who we are as an industry.
I always like to think of things. There's a profit and loss statement, there's a balance sheet. So you can talk about the profit and loss statement, you can talk about the balance sheet. You need both.
Yeah, that's right? It.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. This has been a great show. Thanks everyone for joining in. Thank you so much for the comments throughout. If you're listening to us on LinkedIn later on, add comments. Both Greg and I'll get notifications. You can jump on there. Of course, there's going to be bits that we publish, some snippets from all this that'll get pushed out. Please like, engage, all that's kind of fun. If you're watching on YouTube, Apple, or listening on Apple or Spotify, please like, follow. It helps it much easier to find us and for other people to enjoy conversations like we just had today. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, all the comments that came through throughout the show. This adds value. This helps us learn together and keep this good energy going as we kick off into September and the really busy season of the year. Thanks, Greg. Anything else to add before we close out?
Hey, thanks for having me. As I said, we're building the world's largest SFR BTR community. Welcome in.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and enjoy the rest of your week. See ya. Bye.
See you. Thank you, Guillermo.